everyone, and welcome to Your Broker Admin, where we share relevant updates, experiences, and ideas that help you deal with those everyday challenges. Whether you're in a support role or a solo broker newish to the industry, we're here to make your life that little bit easier. It's that time of the week again as we launch another episode of Your Broker Admin. But before we crack open episode 65, here's your weekly bonus history bite. On this day in history, March the 18th, in 1834, 6 farm labourers from Tolpuddle in Dorset, England, were sentenced to transportation to Australia for forming a trade union, a fairly strong response to what would now be considered a standard workplace discussion. And in 2007, former England Test cricketer and Pakistan coach Bob Woolmer was found dead in the West Indies, just one day after Pakistan's loss to Ireland knocked them out of the World Cup. The circumstances were never fully resolved. And moving into the present day, we'll lead off with the reviews wrap-up covering the week ending the 13th of March 2026. A strong week all round with a solid amount of interest savings, new lending opportunities and some revealing client conversations along the way. Then we'll jump into this week's Humpday Helper, where I share some information on the upcoming introduction of two-factor authentication for Cotality. I'm Rob Cummings. Thanks for listening to the show, and let's get into this week's episode. In this week's reviews wrap-up, we unpack outcomes from loan reviews completed during the week ending the 13th of March 2026. It was a great result this week with 14 completed reviews, receiving rate reductions with $10,200 in total interest savings achieved. It's been a while since you've had an interest savings figure above $10,000 for a single week. In fact, it was our first one for this calendar year. In addition to those savings, we also generated 3 lending opportunities amounting to $1.15 million. One of those will be a new client to the broker. There were a number of decent-sized savings outcomes this week. The first, a Bank West customer with $1 million loan on which we obtained a 0.2% rate reduction, giving them $2,000 in savings. An ANZ customer with 3 loans, where we received a 0.24% reduction across all 3 of their loans, providing them with a $2,000 interest saving as well. An Adelaide Bendigo Bank customer who received a 0.15% rate reduction on a $1.2 million loan, giving them an $1,800 saving. Coincidentally, this was for one of our existing brokers who recently purchased another loan book, and we have just taken on management of their reviews. By chance, this just happened to be the very first loan we completed the review on. And the last, a CBA customer with a smaller size loan around the $300,000 mark, with a healthy rate reduction of 0.38%, delivering a $1,175 interest saving for them. There were others with reasonable outcomes, but these were the main ones. On the other hand, we also had a couple of miserly outcomes, both from CBA, with savings of under $50 due to a combination of smaller loan sizes and a minute rate reductions. An interesting outcome from that purchase loan book I spoke about earlier was for the actual broker who sold the book. Their own personal home loan was included in the portfolio, and we managed to get a rate reduction on that one too. With the new lending opportunities, it was somewhat of a mixed bag. One was for $50,000 to purchase a new car. One was an internal refinance of $500,000 after a poor review outcome with ANZ, and one was a new property purchase for the daughter of an existing client, where they were prepared to offer parental guarantee. The approximate amount required is around $600,000. This is also the client we achieved the rate reduction for from Bank West. So now, let's have a look at a couple of client review conversations from the week. The first was a CBA customer with whom they have a couple of loans with. The loans were settled back in 2023, and this was a first-time review for us. One of the loans is on a great rate already of 5.56%, whilst the other was not so great. A pricing review yielded a decent rate reduction down to the 5.56%. This was one highlighted in the rate reduction outcomes. We spoke with the client. Turns out he has just been in contact with the broker about obtaining additional funds to renovate. They're planning to lift the property. It's an old Queenslander, and put a granny flat underneath. They let us know they are married to a Filipino, so has loads of relatives coming and going, hence the need for the renovations. We talked about the property values in the area. Apparently they were offered $800,000 just 3 weeks ago. They indicated Rockhampton was going well generally, but they can't wait to get out of there. They're originally from Yeppoon. Has spent the last 20 years in the mines. They bought their boat from Hervey Bay, which just happens to be where our team member is located. Loved the review and really appreciated the drop in rate. Seemed to love a good chat. The other was an ANZ customer, another of the rate reduction winners. They had 3 investment loans with ANZ, all of which settled back in 2021, and we obtained reductions on all of them. This was another first-time review for us. We made contact with the client. They were a little unsure at first what was going on, even though the broker had sent an introductory email beforehand. We got the impression they hadn't had a lot of contact from the broker over the time. We took the time to explain the review process and ended up all okay. They hopped onto their banking app and confirmed the change we'd received. They asked us what the new repayments would likely be, as they were planning to keep the repayments on these the same to reduce the principal quickly. They went on to advise they also have $2 million in loans with La Trobe, which the broker didn't arrange. Apparently, they weren't able to contact the broker at the time they needed the new loans. We asked if we could look at reviewing those for them, but they declined for now, as they're moving a few things around. They may sell one property and pay a couple of the loans down. He was a really nice guy and thanked us for the call. We let the broker know and recommended they keep in touch with the client, as there was a potential opportunity to get a look at the La Trobe loans sometime down the track. As indicated at the start, some great outcomes achieved this week. On a sobering note though, that second client conversation highlights what you could be missing out on if you're not maintaining regular contact with your existing clients. The old adage, a bird in the hand, does ring true here. In this week's Humpday Helper number 171, we revisit the introduction of two-factor authentication for Cotality, or Property Hub as it's also commonly known. I last spoke on this back in November when they were originally planning to launch this, but at the 11th hour made the decision to defer until the first quarter of 2026. Well, the time has now come. On the 24th of March, two-factor authentication will be implemented on Cotality platforms. It essentially only impacts the banking and finance apps where you are ordering valuations, for example, Valax, Property Hub, etc. RP Data, which is the platform we use to generate property reports for our review service, has not been included in this rollout. There will be an option to nominate delegates who will need to register for their own login. When they register with a lender, there is a checkbox that needs to be selected indicating they are registering as a delegate, and they will also need to quote the broker's lender code. I would guess this was the bit that was missing when they first planned to launch back in November. Thankfully, common sense prevailed after a fair bit of feedback from the brokers was received. You can find the user guide online, which I've included the link for in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Your Broker Admin. If you've got feedback, questions, or a topic you'd like covered on the show, you can now send it through via our Contact the Show page. The link is in the episode notes. If the link's not clickable in your player, just copy it from the show notes or head to the episode description on your phone. A rating on Apple Podcasts, a review on Podchaser, or a follow on Spotify all help the show reach the people it's built for. I'm Rob Cummings, and this has been Your Broker Admin, for those who like their process neat.